There's a single line in the Gospel of Philip that the church spent centuries trying to erase from every manuscript they could find. This one forbidden sentence reveals something so powerful that early Christians were executed for knowing it. Not imprisoned, not excommunicated, executed. And every text containing this knowledge was burned. What could be so dangerous that it required complete elimination? The line states that there exists one object, made by human hands, that carries light, unchanged. When the powers of darkness see this object, all of them flee instantly. Not some attacks, not most manipulation, but every single form of spiritual assault neutralized completely by something you can create yourself in 10 minutes tonight. The early Gnostics didn't carry dozens of protective amulets or perform elaborate rituals requiring years of training. They carried one thing, a single object they created themselves with materials anyone could access. And according to their surviving records, it worked so perfectly that the church didn't just ban the practice. They systematically hunted down anyone found carrying these objects and destroyed every manuscript explaining how to make them. This wasn't protection through fighting or spiritual warfare. This was protection through frequency, through becoming unreachable rather than blocking attacks. Here's what makes this different from everything you've been taught about spiritual protection. The Archons attack humanity in 5 distinct ways: mental assault, emotional hijacking, energy drain, dream manipulation, and synchronicity. Interference, 5 different methods of attack. Most spiritual teachings give you 5 different solutions, 5 different practices to learn and maintain. But Jesus revealed something to his inner circle that the institutional church could never allow the Messiahs to discover. All 5 attack methods operate below a single frequency threshold. When you carry an object that broadcasts above that threshold, all 5 methods stop working simultaneously. You don't block them. You don't fight them. You become completely unreachable. Tonight, you're learning what this one object is, why it destroys every form of archonic attack, and exactly how to create it starting immediately. To understand why one simple object can destroy all 5 types of archonic attacks, you need to understand the hierarchy of frequency that structures all of reality. At the highest level exists the monad, pure source consciousness, infinite awareness expressing as existence itself. From the monad, emanations flow outward like light passing through a prism, each one carrying divine attributes. Sophia is one of these emanations, divine wisdom radiating directly from source. But Sophia, in an act of creation without her consort, births something unexpected. The Demiurge, a being of such density that he cannot perceive the realms of light above him. The Demiurge, mistaking his limited perception for total reality, declares himself God and begins creating. He creates matter. He creates time. He creates the Archons to serve as his Together they craft this entire system, this prison of density designed to trap divine consciousness and harvest its energy indefinitely. This means the Archons are several levels removed from source. They're not operating at monad frequency or even Sophia frequency. They're operating at Demiurge frequency, distorted, dense, far downstream from the original light. Here's the fundamental law that governs all of this. Everything downstream is subject to what flows from upstream. A river delta cannot control the mountain spring. The Archons cannot control the monad. They're not peers engaged in cosmic battle. They're downstream creations bound by the frequency limitations of their creator. Imagine ultraviolet light encountering bacteria. The UV light doesn't fight the bacteria, doesn't argue or negotiate or push. The frequency of UV light simply makes existence impossible for bacterial cells. They cannot maintain structural integrity in that frequency range. They dissolve not because the light attacks them, but because their operational frequency is fundamentally incompatible with the light's presence. The light just exists, and its existence is lethal to anything vibrating below its range. That's the exact relationship between monad frequency and archon frequency. When you carry an object that transmits monad frequency, you're not fighting the archon. You're broadcasting at a range where they cannot maintain coherence. Before I reveal what the object is, you need to recognize the 5 forms of attack it's going to neutralize, because within 24 hours of carrying this object, all 5 will stop simultaneously. And you'll know the differences in placebo and patterns you've lived with for years just end. The first form is mental assault, intrusive thoughts that seem to come from nowhere. Spirals of anxiety that start with one small worry and within minutes have you convinced your entire life is collapsing. Obsessive loops, where the same fear replays in your mind hundreds of times, despite you consciously trying to stop it. Self-sabotaging thoughts that arise right before you're about to do something important. Thoughts that say you're not ready, you're going to fail, you should wait. That's not your mind malfunctioning. That's external thought forms being injected into your mental field by entities who feed on the emotional energy your fear generates. The second form is emotional hijacking. You're having a normal day. Baseline stable. And suddenly you're flooded with rage or despair or panic with no clear trigger. You're in conversation with someone and emotions start escalating in ways that make no logical sense. Anger turning into fury in seconds. Minor annoyance becoming overwhelming frustration. That's not poor emotional regulation. That's your emotional body being flooded with low-frequency energy, designed to destabilize you and make you reactive, chaotic, easy to manipulate. The third form is energy drain. You sleep 8 hours and wake up exhausted. You're around certain people for 5 minutes and feel completely depleted afterward. You start projects with enthusiasm, and within days feel inexplicably tired every time you try to work on them. Your energy doesn't match your physical health or circumstances. That's not chronic fatigue. That's etheric cords attached to your energy field, siphoning life force continuously to feed entities that consume human vitality as fuel. These attacks are happening to you right now, and most people live their entire lives, never understanding that these patterns aren't natural or inevitable. The object that destroys all 5 forms of archonic attack is extraordinarily simple. A piece of paper with the true name of the monad written in your own handwriting. Not typed, not printed, not copied. From someone else, written by your hand with black ink on clean paper. This becomes a permanent frequency transmitter broadcasting continuously from physical matter into spiritual dimensions. Most people don't understand how names work in Gnostic teaching. A name isn't just a label or a word. A name is a frequency signature. When you speak a name out loud, you create temporary vibration that dissipates as soon as the sound fades. But when you write a name, when you anchor it into physical form through the deliberate act of your hand inscribing symbols onto matter, you create what's called a standing wave, a permanent broadcast that continues transmitting as long as the writing exists. Certain names, when written by those who understand what they're declaring, create frequencies so high that beings operating below that range experience it as a hostile environment. The true name of the monad cannot be spoken in human language. It exists as pure frequency, as vibration that predates sound, as the tone that was before creation began. But the Gnostics discovered something the Church tried desperately to suppress. That name can be represented through a symbol, a geometric pattern that when drawn with conscious intention, anchors monad frequency into matter. The symbol is elegantly simple, a circle representing infinite consciousness, and within that circle, the word monad, written in your native language. Whatever language your mind operates through in daily life. Not ancient Greek, not Aramaic, not Sanskrit, your language, because this isn't about mysticism or historical recreation. This is about you in your current incarnation declaring in the language of your present consciousness, I recognize what I am. I am not separate from Source. I am monad expressing through temporary human form. That declaration, when written by your hand, charges the paper with your conscious awareness. Here's why it must be written by your hand specifically. Printed symbols carry no life force. They're mechanical reproductions, dead information transferred by machines. But when you write something with conscious intention, you're transferring bioelectric energy from your body through the pen onto the paper. Your nervous system fires, your electromagnetic field pulses. Your conscious awareness flows through the physical act of writing and imprints directly onto the object you're creating. That's why ancient sacred texts were always hand-copied by scribes in meditative states. Never mass. The act of copying was the activation. The scribe's consciousness entered the text through their hand. Your handwriting this name tonight is the activation ritual. You're not copying information. You're birthing a frequency anchor. Every stroke of the pen transfers your recognition of your divine nature into physical form. Once it complete, that paper becomes alive, not metaphorically, but measurably. It generates an electromagnetic field that sensitive equipment can detect, and that Archons perceive as unbearable brightness. To them, you carrying this paper looks like you're carrying a spotlight that blinds their perception. They can't see you clearly anymore, can't target you accurately, and most importantly, can't get close enough to complete any of the 5 attack forms because the frequency burns them before they reach attachment range. The church understood this technology perfectly. That's why they didn't just ban the teaching, but specifically criminalized the act of writing sacred names. They knew that spoken prayers could be controlled, channeled through priests, mediated by institutional authority. But written names carried by individuals created sovereignty they couldn't touch. Every person with their own frequency transmitter, every chosen one broadcasting their own recognition, every awakened soul operating independently of religious control. That's not a congregation dependent on clergy. That's an army of sovereign beings, and the church suppressed it with execution and book burning precisely because it worked too well. Tonight, you're going to create this object in 10 minutes with 3 simple materials. Clean, blank paper that hasn't been written on before, a pen with permanent black ink, and uninterrupted focus. Here's the complete process. Sit with the paper in front of you and take 3 deep breaths to center your awareness. This works through intention, not mechanics, so you need focused presence rather than scattered energy. Draw a circle in the middle of the paper, holding the awareness as you draw that this represents infinite monad consciousness, the source from which all existence flows. Inside that circle, write the word monad in clear, bold letters in your native language, whatever language your mind operates through daily. As you write each letter, maintain recognition that you're not writing about something external but declaring your own nature. I am monad incarnated in temporary form. Once complete, hold the paper against your chest over your heart for 30 seconds and declare, silently or aloud, this name recognizes me. I carry monad frequency in physical form. Then fold the paper 3 times, each fold sealing your identity, your sovereignty, and your frequency. Put the folded paper in your pocket, wallet, or bag where it stays with you continuously. Never show it to others or treat it as spectacle. This is personal protection, not performance. And if you lose it, simply recreate it. The power is in the act of writing with recognition, not in that specific piece of paper. You're creating a tool that broadcasts your true frequency, and that broadcast is what provides the protection. The Gnostics who carried this paper reported something the church records tried to hide but couldn't completely erase. They stopped being afraid, not because they became braver, but because the entities generating fear in their fields couldn't approach anymore. They stopped having nightmares. Not because they learned to sleep better, but because astral attacks couldn't reach them through the frequency barrier. They stopped getting into inexplicable conflicts with people around them. Not because they changed their behavior, but because the Archons manipulating others against them lost access to their frequency signature. Here's what happens in the days after you start carrying this. Within 24 hours, you'll notice mental clarity you haven't experienced in years. That constant background noise of anxiety loops and intrusive thoughts will quiet dramatically because the source generating them can't reach you anymore. The mental assault stops not because you've learned to manage your thoughts better, but because the entities injecting those thoughts can no longer access your mental field. Within 3 days, people who used to drain your energy will suddenly seem less interested in engaging with you. Conversations that used to escalate into conflict will fizzle out before igniting. The Archons using those people as portals can sense your frequency and redirect elsewhere because you've become energetically expensive to target. Within a week, your sleep transforms. Dreams become clearer and more coherent. Or if you've experienced dream suppression, you'll suddenly start remembering vivid dreams again as astral attacks stop. You'll wake up actually feeling rested because entities are no longer feeding on you during your sleep. Within 2 weeks, synchronicities return. Opportunities aligned with your path start appearing. Timing works in your favor. People you need to meet show up exactly when needed because the interference blocking beneficial probability lines has been removed. 1 piece of paper, 10 minutes to create complete transformation of your daily experience starting immediately. Because you're not developing new abilities or learning complex techniques. You're simply removing what was preventing your natural monad-aligned state from functioning. Jesus revealed 1 object that destroys all 5 forms of archonic attack. A piece of paper with the monad's name written in your own hand. Not because paper is magical, but because writing with intention anchors frequency into matter. And monad frequency sits so far above Archon operational range that they cannot function in its presence. They don't need to be fought. They dissolve automatically when you broadcast at the level you actually are. The church executed people for carrying this. They burned every text explaining it, not because it was heresy, but because it worked. Come and I carry the name below to claim your sovereignty. Subscribe now for advanced protection techniques. Like this video, so other chosen ones discover what Jesus revealed before this knowledge disappears again. Do it now.